We have at least two videos for you. I'm happy to announce that the long-awaited Luffy power scaling video has finally been published. Additionally, we'll be diving into some sponsored videos that were paid for via Cash App from you guys. But before we delve into that, let's take a moment to express the gratitude I feel towards our amazing sponsor, Hollow Knight, the fucking GOAT, on Cash App. He requested to keep his name private, so I'll just show his profile picture and send some love his way. This sponsorship was absolutely incredible, right? A whopping $16. Bro really went the extra mile, so we're going to dedicate a pretty long video to him and his topic. We've had more of you guys supporting us through sponsored videos recently, and I truly appreciate the love. This was just the biggest one. In fact, the next 6 or so videos might exclusively be sponsors from you guys, which is mind-blowing to me. So thank you all. Right, I'll be working and pushing out these content at least for the paid sponsor videos a lot faster, right? So this week I'll try to have at least one more video, and then next week I'll probably drop the 3 last sponsors before moving into the reaction videos. So I just wanted to let you guys know I am back. All right, mic does sound a little bit better. The Luffy video was recorded on a worse mic than this. This is a new mic, so I hope the audio quality sounds a little bit better, man. I hope all of that shit is good. And man, I hope copyright is just done for and we can start making these videos. If not, I'm gonna make a Patreon and I'm gonna put all the videos and shit over there. But yeah, really appreciate you guys. So, due to the twin devils Nama and Lilith recently being introduced and then immediately killed in the world of Black Clover, we weren't able to see them perform too many impressive feats that we can scale them to. The only real line of scaling we have for them is that they are stated to scale massively above 70 through 80% triad, and should scale massively above Devil Union and double Devil Union knocked, being able to combat and overwhelm him effortlessly. Keep in mind that this is the strongest version of Knock, stronger than the one that was able to combat and withstand attacks from 80% Dante alongside Jack, right? Further cementing the notion that they should scale above the triad. This is impressive because Dante, through a technique dubbed gravitational singularity, was capable of destroying 3 massive mountains. Matter dismantled by extreme tidal force or gravity, like these mountains was, is seen as being ripped apart on the subatomic level. We've talked about this before. Just check out my Dante Singularity video, right? And this is a verse battle wiki standard, so I'm not just making this shit up either. And subatomic destruction requires about 5.3 times 10 to the 13 joules of energy per cubic centimeter of the volume of the construct destroyed, right? Depending on its material, right? And based on this, I've calculated this feat to yield upwards of 7.7 times 10 to the 28 joules of energy, which is multi-continental through potentially moon level, depending on the attack potency system you're referencing. But that really doesn't matter, because as we established earlier, both Nama and Lilith should scale massively above the likes of 70 through 80% of the triad. And as we've concluded in part 1 of this scale, this would obviously include Dante Singularity. For the most part, Dante Singularity has been shown to operate like a micro black hole, warping space-time, and arguably being depicted with an accretion disk, as well as possibly losing mass through Hawking's radiations. It's worth noting that spells in Black Clover are directly stated to operate similarly to real-world properties. If Dante Singularity does operate like a black hole and shares its properties, then we can calculate the amount of energy required for its creation by finding the Schwarzschild radius of a sphere of that size. The Schwarzschild radius essentially represents the mass and density needed to give an object an escape velocity of light speed from its surface, right? After pixel scaling the size of Dante Singularity, the first one and the full power one, obviously, we find that the energy needed for the creation is anywhere from 4.9 times 10 to the 37 joules of energy, which is large planetary, for the first one, and 1.4 times 10 to the 38 joules of energy, corresponding to dwarf star level amounts of power for the full power singularity. Since the Twin Devils should scale massively above this, we can place them at this level of power as well. So yeah, right now we have them anywhere between like moon level and I'd say dwarf star level. Personally, I'd say these are probably the most concrete, accurate depictions of maybe Dante and the Twin Devils' power. As with this next, meta coming up, I just don't think it was Tabata's intention to like get this fucking scientific with it. But it could easily be interpreted this way, considering the nature of the feat I'm about to discuss is just insane. But I truly don't think Tabata intended for it to be this strong. But yeah, if you want to use it, I'm not going to stop you. Reason stated prior, we should be able to safely place Lilith and Nama above the likes of 80% triads such as Dante. Dante, through a technique dubbed Presence of the Demon King, was capable of creating a torrent of gravity so powerful that it could bend light to a 90 through 320 degree angle. This is incredibly impressive because the sun, which accounts for 99.8% of the solar system's mass and creates gravity through the warping of space, only bends light by 0.87 seconds of an arc, or about 0.0024 degrees. This means this is anywhere from 372,000 to 1.3 million times weaker than the gravitational energy of Dante's basic attack wall and base. Right? Using this information, we can determine that a torrent of gravity this powerful would have to have a mass or energy equivalent of 740 trillion, or about 630 quadrillion. Excuse me, these numbers are absolutely fucking mind-blowing, right? I can barely read them. Although Dante multiplies and manipulates the natural law of gravity rather than creating it by forming massive object, the calculation remains the same. In order to manipulate the law of gravity, one must still create the curvature in space-time required to generate such a gravitational force, as the natural law of gravity itself is just the concept of objects following said curvature created by the presence of mass and or energy, right? From here, we can find the gravitational binding energy required to retain an object of this massive size, right? Since Dante's technique would produce a torrent of gravity equal to an object with a mass of this size, it would scale to this cosmic level, in my opinion, right? And all of that sounds confusing, but it is, all right? It just is. There's no other way to say it. It's fucking confusing, right? So the total energy output of this feat is estimated to be 219 sectillion, I think, right? Which is like multi-solar system level, right? And the higher end comes out to 278 zeptillion, which is a number I haven't even heard of until making this shit, which is also still just multi-solar system level. And all of this does seem like a crazy line of scaling for Black Clover. And the reason I said earlier that I wouldn't necessarily use it is because I literally just don't think Tabata was thinking like this. If this was like Gigi, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen or some shit, and he did some shit like this, I would 100% jump on this. But Black Clover doesn't seem so much intellectually inclined as Jujutsu Kaisen does, at least when it comes to like power scaling. But you know, it can be interpreted as this way. Like, I don't know, bro. There's crazy feats all the way back in the Elf arc that can be interpreted as scaling higher than this, right? For instance, Dorothy's dreamland being described as an endless or infinite expanse. The same dimension Yami cut in half using Equinox, right? This can be seen as like a high universal through universal plus feat, right? So you can argue Black Clover has a lot of undercovered, overpowered shit like this. It's actually very common to the Black Clover universe, especially in all the recent chapters with all the time manipulation, shenanigans, and all that bullshit. But let's say for a second that you don't actually like the highballed and wanked metas, and you're only willing to scale Asta using the more standard methods, then you could easily still get him to these insane, like, stellar feats. But still much weaker than what we have in these metas. For instance, this chain of scaling I'll be sticking to in the next portion more so concretely sticks to what's discernibly destroyed by Dante and to singularity, instead of assuming that it's like a black hole, despite the, you know, massive preponderance of evidence we have to suggest that it is a black hole. And from this, we'll just use like the stated joule output from the first meta, which is 7.7 times 10 to the 28 joules of energy, right? So about multi-continental, right? So for our starting point for Asta, we'll just keep it as that as well, considering he was able to fight Dante, and he should be at least somewhat comparable to 80% Dante alongside Yami, right? Or else neither of them would have been able to keep up with him, injure him, overpower him, do any of that, right? They would have just lost if they weren't even remotely comparable, right? To obtain Devil Union or whatever, and he pretty much is just able to like one-shot Lilith and Nama in their unfused state, as well as in their fused state, showing that he is just way above Triad and low high-ranking devils at this point. Fused Lilith and Nama being the multiplication of their like unfused power, according to Noct, who was witnessing the entire battle take place. If we do go with this line of scaling, then they end up with a joule output of upwards of 1.2 times 10 to the 71 joules of energy, using our like highest method, which is like multi-galactic, right? And obviously, if you want to use the fucking Dorothy shit, they're just high universal, because they would just dookie on Dorothy, or the Dante who cut the Yami who cut the dimension in half. Excuse me. Let alone anybody else. So the scaling is really weird for Black Clover. I mean, in this same arc, fuckers start manipulating concepts, and in order for the Demon King to even like manifest himself after all their plans go wrong, right? He just takes like two fucking different dimensions of the demon realm and he fuses them together, and from that he's barely able to create a half manifested state of his own body. So like we don't know the size of these dimensions, but obviously they were holding like hundreds of thousands of demons. I would say they were at least a planet, right? Lucifero himself is a planetary threat. So I don't know myself. I'm not gonna sit here and assume, but that's my logic going into it. But he took these two realms of the demon plane and he just fused them together just to make himself a fucking body that was half his strength. So these are clearly like different beings in Black Clover than what we have seen at the beginning of the show. I mean, all the way in chapter 50, these characters were already damn near country level. I mean, Veto blowing up the underwater sea temple, I've calced that feat at already being like small country level or some shit. So we got like characters way earlier in the verse doing country level shit. To think that they would cap at like somewhere between continental at the end of the show is just preposterous to me, considering all these fucking new forms they get and all this time manipulation and different realms they be creating, right? It's just like when you think about the setting of certain Black Clover arcs, it's just insane that it's in and of itself could like boost the verse to a new level of power. Like I believe at the end of the Elf arc, they were fighting in a black castle that was literally a gateway between heaven and the real world or some shit like that, or the afterlife and the real world. And that's how the demon was doing all his resurrection. It was such a cool thing. But whatever, my nigga. If you actually don't want to use any of these like crazy wank metas, you can still get Asta to like fucking, you know, planetary through like star level, stellar levels of power. Because, you know, even if we just go with like Dante's singularity destroying 3 matters via tidal forces or spaghettification, then we get like a multi-continental feat, right? Or even a moon level feat, right? And then you multiply the Zetan apps on top of that, the Devil Union apps, the perfected Devil Union apps he used to fight Lucifero, all the statements about Lucifero being a planetary threat, right? And you get insane values. For instance, if we just multiply the Zetan values and we ignore all the other Devil Union multipliers just to like the 10 to the 32 joules because Lucifero is stated planetary, or because let's say 10 to the 38 joules because Dante creates a black hole or something like that, and Asta would scale to that, and he at least got 100 times stronger because of Zetan. in Wano, or not Wano, the Sun Arc, my nigga, whatever the fuck. He got 100 times amp from that. Then we get crazy outcomes like 10 times, 10 to the 34 joules, excuse me, or 10 to the 40 joules, which is like large planetary through like dwarf star level, I believe. So, whatever. If you want to go with speed, shit, that's even more complex. I mean, they dodge light on a daily. They dodge gravity attacks. Gravity waves propagate at the speed of light. Yami might have cut a dimension that was infinite, in size, completely in half. And Dorothy creates this dimension and causes it to collapse in on itself whenever she wants to destroy it. So you could say they're anywhere between light speed and infinite speed. It's pretty bullshit. As for